In this video, we'll discuss using dVeloper in Premiere Pro. So let's get started. So first things first, we'll just show how to apply dVeloper to your footage. So go to your Effects tab. If you don't have an Effects tab, go to Window and click on Effects. Then go down to the Video Effects category, go down to dTective, and here's dVeloper. And you can either click on dVeloper, drag it and drop it to your footage. And let's undo that, because you can also just double click and apply it that way. Okay. Now once it's applied, you want to open up your Effect Controls tab, which is up here. If you don't have an Effect Controls tab, go to Window and select Effect Controls. And here's dVeloper. So let's discuss what dVeloper is and what it's used for. dVeloper is a frame averaging tool. It's primarily designed for forensic video analysis to give you a clearer image. And if I read from the dTective user guide, here's what it says. The purpose of frame averaging is to average as many frames of video together in order to create a single average of pixels that make up the individual frames of video, the results of which can then be exported as a single still image or displayed as a clarified video clip. So what happens when you apply dVeloper to your footage? Well, it depends on what kind of footage you have. In general, if you're trying to clarify a piece of video, you'll want the video to be as still as possible. So in this video, you can see that I have a bunch of dancers on the stage. And let's click on dVeloper in the Effect Controls so I can adjust the region of interest by clicking and dragging. And if I do that, and if I isolate the dancers here, you'll see that they're becoming blurry. And the reason for that is that dVeloper is combining all these frames and then averaging those values. So if I was to play this, and let's change the output to RGB. I'll discuss the modes and the outputs in a minute here, but change this to RGB so you can really see. And when I play this, they're just all blurry. And the way this works when it's frame averaging is dVeloper looks and averages frames both forward and back. So if I'm on frame 50 and I'm averaging 100 frames, dVeloper is going to look forward 50 frames and back 50 frames and then average those values. If I'm at the very beginning, it's going to just look forward. And if I'm at the very end, it'll look backwards. If I'm at frame, say 70, and I'm averaging 100 frames, it's going to look 30 frames forward and 70 frames backwards. So because these dancers are all moving, they're being blurred out, the video's blurry, but the audience members are fairly stationary. So if I was to take this region of interest and drag it down to the audience, you'll see that they're fairly clear, because really audience members and the performance don't generally move very much. So if I play this, you can see that that's pretty well clarified actually. And if I, isolate certain areas down here, you can see that I can get some interesting effects. So I think that explains frame averaging fairly well. So let's look at some more forensic type of footage. So we have a car here with a license plate, and let's enlarge this a little bit, go 200, and then we'll apply dVeloper and we'll discuss what's happening with this footage. So click on dVeloper in your Effect Controls so we can control the region of interest. We will highlight the plate. So now that we have this applied, let's look at the various controls in dVeloper. We've discussed frames already. We're averaging 100 frames. If I was to do one frame, you get this. So the more frames I have to work with, the better my results, especially when I'm working with a nice still piece of video like this one. So I can go all the way to 100 on this, and it looks pretty clear. Now tracks, this is primarily for analog video only. So the idea here is that you would digitize your footage, meaning a piece of like VHS tape or Hi8. You would digitize that footage multiple times, and then you would apply it to your timeline over and over and over and over, with the idea being that each pass of a tape, of an analog tape, introduces different types of noise, different amounts of noise. So the more you digitize it, hopefully, the more you can get out of your developed footage, your averaged footage. So if I had multiple tracks down here, like if I had if I hold the Alt key, I can copy these clips down here. I could just choose, all right, well, I want video track 2 to have video track 3 on it, video track 3 to have video 2, and video 4 to have video 1, and hopefully that would give me better results. This is the same piece of video duplicated, so I'm not going to gain any advantage doing this, but I'm just showing you that if you did have an analog piece of video that you were able to digitize multiple times, this might be useful to you. So let's delete these off the timeline and just work with the one piece of video, and we'll close this tracks adjustment. Okay, region of interest. What does this do? This is this box right here. So you can either click and drag in here to adjust it. You can grab the handles on the side to reposition it, resize it, or if you'd like, you can use the center adjustment here. This is X and Y coordinates, so X will be left and right, and then Y is up and down. And that's the same as dragging. You see as I drag, these adjustments also change. Width is fairly obvious, but that's the width of the box. So how wide do you want it? And again, same as dragging here. And of course, height. Just like that. Okay. Do you want to display the results in the ROI only? ROI is region of interest. So do you want to display these results in region of interest only, or do you want to see the entire video? I turn this off. Now you can see the entire video. I'll turn this back on. There we go. And then auto set contrast levels. That means that if I turn this off and I start dragging this box around, it's going to use the previously used adjustments, or when I initially apply the developer effect, it's not going to try to auto adjust based on what I've selected. So you can see it's not really doing a whole lot as I drag. But if I turn this back on, now it starts to adjust accordingly. So off, and then back on. Okay, reset the default levels. I'll show this in a second after we start messing with the enhanced adjustments. And then reset ROI position. That's the default region of interest position when you first apply the developer effect. So if I click on this, that's back to the default position. Let me undo that and put this back on the plate. Now we have mode. These are the channels, the color channels. So I can choose RGB, which is red, green, and blue. That's color. So that's averaging all the color values, which looks pretty bad in this case. I can choose an average of all of them. So here's the average of all of them. I can choose the luminance channel, red, green, and then blue. And we found that green seems to be the cleanest of the color channels, so much so that the default selection is green when you first apply developer. So green seems to work best here as well. So we'll keep it on green. Now we have sharpen. So you can sharpen the output. So if I drag this to the right, you'll start to see it getting a little bit sharper. Go back to the left, and it's a little bit softer. Okay. And then we have black, midtone, white, and midtone gamma tension, and these all correlate with the histogram. So you'll see as I twirl this down, if I drag this to the right, watch the histogram, and go to the left, you'll see the histogram is being adjusted. I can also adjust black levels by clicking here and dragging. You can see that this slider is directly correlated to this adjustment. And then white, we'll talk about midtone in a second, because midtone and midtone gamma tension work together. So we'll talk about that in a second. But white, same thing here, all the way to the right. And you see that's adjusting the white values. Okay. And then midtone, if I drag the midtone to the right, let me make sure you can see the histogram. You'll see it's getting darker, and you see this is the midtone, and you see there's a curve here. We can adjust the amount of this curve by using the midtone gamma tension. And so some of these values that are getting clipped by this curve happening here, you can adjust by adjusting the tension. So if I drag this tension to the right, you'll see that this tension is a little less. It's not as curved. And some of those values are being brought back into the image. So midtone to the left, you see that tension is not very much. It's pretty straight. But if I go to the right on the midtone, you have this curve happening, and then that tension can be adjusted using the midtone gamma tension slider. And of course the output is adjusted as well. All right. Okay, and then as we play this, let me change this. Let me go back up actually to reset to default levels. Let's click on that real quick to see what that does. You can see what happened there. And then let's make sure we auto set the contrast levels. And you can see it did a pretty good job of bringing that back so you can actually see some of those numbers and letters. And if we play this, that's frame averaged. And then you could pick the frame you want to work with that seems to work best, and then go ahead and export that out as an image file. All right. Now, if you wanted to save this effect, you can do that. Saving effects in Premiere is a simple matter of right-clicking on the effect and choosing Save Preset. Click on that. Just choose Scale as the type, and then name your preset. We'll call this dVeloper or Plate. Click on OK. Go to your Effects tab. Go all the way to the top. Click on Presets. And here is your preset right there that you just saved. And then you can also delete these if you want. Just right-click, choose Delete, or hit Delete on your keyboard. You'll see, are you sure? And then that's gone. Okay. So that's how dVeloper works in Adobe Premiere Pro.